My name is Danica Grujicic. I am a neurosurgeon and I work at the Clinic for Neurosurgery, Clinical Center of Belgrade. I am full professor of neurosurgery at the Medical School, University of Belgrade in Serbia. I'm asking just for a few minutes of your time. Please listen for what I have to tell you. My topic is something that you have maybe not heard, but you have always heard that from another part, another side of the story. You never heard our Serbian side of the story, so please listen to me. Without any approval of United Nations, somebody very powerful in 1999 decided that my country, my hometown, should be bombed. I spent all my life saving human lives, helping people with brain tumors, with spine tumors, with congenital anomalies, with all kinds of disorders. But yet, your president at that time, Mr. Clinton, decided that I should probably die because I'm a Serbian one. You heard only one side of the story, but you never heard about ours, Serbian side of the story. NATO alliance started bombing my country in 1999 on 24th of March and stopped bombing on the 10th of June. It was 78 days. During that time, 60% of their targets were civilian ones. Hospitals, markets, civil trains, and yet even civil homes. A small child, a girl of 4 years of age, died on her potty just because she lived near the airport. And yet, people like Clinton family called her a collateral damage. How would you feel if your child died in your house because somebody decided to bomb your country, and yet those somebody called her a collateral damage? How would you feel? What kind of weapon did the NATO alliance use in my country? The weapons with deleted uranium, who needs 4.5 billion years to disappear. They used bombing of the chemical industries that were on all mapping of hazards, which means that you mustn't bomb that facility because destroying that facility means environmental disaster. What else? They used cluster bombs in the middle of the markets of the second largest city in Serbia in a niche. Why? To kill as much people as they can. Why did they use that? So I have all reasons to believe that actually the intention of all people who worked for NATO at that time were genocide one. And I'll try to prove you why do I think so. NATO polluted everything in my country, and air, water and soil. NATO aviation burned 16.5 tons of kerosene, which need oxygen for the burning. And the amount of oxygen were the same amount as all living creatures in Serbia, including human beings, plants and animals, spent in 50 years. They polluted our air because 20 tons of chlorine went into the atmosphere and we all were breathing that same air. And not only the Serbian population or citizens of Serbia and other nations were jeopardized, but also the people from neighboring countries like Bulgaria, Greece, Romania, which are the members of NATO. What about the soil? It is estimated that 3 billion and 800 millions of earth, kilograms of earth, were displaced from its ground, and they were practically became useless. What about the water? The Danube was polluted with 165 tons of fluorohydrogen acid that was put into the river Sava near Belgrade after the bombing of chemical industry in Baric. Not only the people in Serbia who used the water from Danube were jeopardized, but also the people from Bulgaria and Romania, again the members of NATO. It is estimated that about 10 million people were jeopardized in that moment when they used the water from Danube in the April and in the May of 1999 during NATO bombing. What was the proof of genocide nature of NATO bombing? They deliberately, this is not my native language and I apologize to you, but I'll try to make it clear for you. They bombed intentionally every chemical industry that was registered on the hazard map. What is the hazard map? It is usually used to say to anybody who tries to bomb anything, don't touch this facility, don't bomb this chemical industry, because if you do so, you are doing the irreversible damage to the nature, to the environment, not only for that moment, but for the next generations. And that's exactly what NATO did. Many doctors and scientists tried to make a connection between depleted uranium and the disease in a lot of NATO soldiers calling Gulf syndrome. But even the people like Arif Dizdarevic, who worked for the Ministry of Defense in the United States and tried to write to Mr. Clinton about that kind of syndrome, they were actually persecuted, and nobody decided to give them an opportunity to really prove what is the connection between new disease and the depleted uranium. What is actually the depleted uranium that was used in the weapons of NATO during the campaign and criminal campaign against my country in 1999? It is actually the nuclear waste. Why? Because independent laboratories in Sweden and Switzerland proved that among the substances in the penetrators, they found plutonium. You can't find plutonium in the nature, it can only be found in nuclear facilities. So instead of storing nuclear waste and depleted uranium, some Western countries decided that it is nice to put them into the weapon. It will be a very powerful weapon, and it can pollute the country for billions and billions of years that is necessary for the uranium to disappear. So instead of spending money for storing depleted uranium, they put it into the weapons. And my question is, the people who owns all those factories of penetrators and weapons with depleted uranium, do they really care about their workers who work there? Are they protected when they are dealing with depleted uranium? And what about also the soldiers who are using these weapons? Does anybody think about their health, about their future and the future of their children? Why? Because depleted uranium is very dangerous. It makes chromosomal changes. It makes changes into the genetic material of every one of us. So next generations, kids of and children of all those soldiers can be damaged, can have many inherited anomalies. Does anybody think about that? When I'm thinking what they have done to my country, I just wonder what is the situation in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, in Afghanistan. Do the populations of this country have any consequences of the ecological disaster the NATO bombing is performing all over the world? The problem with depleted uranium is not just the immediate effect, but unfortunately the effect after many, many years after it comes into the human being or something like that. What happens with the penetrators? When they actually explode, the dust comes into the air with very small particles of the depleted uranium. It comes when you breathe near or many hundreds of kilometers away from the place where the weapon exploded with depleted uranium. You actually can enter the particles with depleted uranium can enter your respiratory system, and then it goes into your blood. They usually accumulate in kidneys, but it can provoke the development of malignant diseases 5 to 10 or 15 to 12 years after the explosion or after the bombing. And that's exactly what happened in Serbia. After 5 to 10 years, we have 76% more leukemias and lymphomas than before. We also have a higher mortality rate. It was higher for 136%. And what happened 15 years after the bombing? 40,000 newly diagnosed malignancies in 7 million population of Serbia. What does it mean? In the world statistics, you have 2,000 newly diagnosed malignant diseases per million. Serbia has 5,500 newly diagnosed per million. So it's almost 2.7 times more than the rest of the world. Why? Because somebody, I say again, very, very powerful, decided that my people, my country, should be bombed. Where was the diplomacy? Where was the fact that the NATO wanted to help Albanians on Kosovo and Metohija? Among the 112 locations with explosions of the weapons with depleted uranium, 106 were in Kosovo and Metohija. And yet those people remained there, Serbs and Albanians again, and what happened to them? Nobody wants to talk about it. Do they have more malignancies? Do they have more abortions, spontaneous abortions in women? Do they have more autoimmune diseases? Do they have more congenital anomalies? Of course they do. But they just don't want to talk about it. I want to talk about it. My country has an epidemic of malignant diseases. My country has an epidemic of autoimmune diseases. The environment has never been checked out because our government didn't want to do that. What are we supposed to do? To keep silent about it? To tell you, bravo NATO, please come and bomb us? No, I'm not going to tell that. I'm going to tell them that they are criminals. For me, all NATO alliance, NATO alliance, whatever you call it, is actually one big criminal organization. What happened to my Serbia in 1999 was classical ecological genocide, or ecocide, whatever you call it. The people from headquarters of NATO deliberately decided to destroy chemical industry facilities, electro-energetic plants, and petrol industries. Why? They must have known how many toxic elements will be spread in the air, in the soil, and in the water after their bombing. But they did it anyway. So they had the intention to poison my people and the citizens of Serbia for many, many years. Unfortunately, they did it, and we still don't know what the result, what will be the definite result after a few dozen years after the bombing. But we know now that more and more malignancies, more and more sick children, more and more sick people are living here in Serbia. And we can thank that to NATO. When we are talking about ecocide, my question is, where is the report of the, one of the members of the UNEP, the organization of the United Nations who are dealing with environmental damage and ecological problems. Bakari Kante, the man from Senegal, was present here in April 1999, and he wrote that actually what was NATO doing in my country was an ecocide. But somehow nobody had heard for his report. Nobody, but again an American journalist, person who first tried to talk and to write about the ecocide that happened in my country. Thank you, Robert Parson, for that. I learned a lot from your articles. But one thing also happened in 1999. A TV station had been bombed, the journalists were killed, but nobody from the Western world, their colleagues, nobody reacted like it was normal to kill the journalists. You probably know that or not, but actually they did bomb the TV station. Don't tell me that it is a military target. It was actually one of the civilian targets that they destroyed. Why did I decide to talk about this? The truth is very important, and you have to know that every truth has at least two sides. One that you in the Western countries probably heard was the story that your media told you. But now you heard my story of the person who gave her life for helping people and who could be killed in that days because presidents of United States, Great Britain, France, and I won't talk about the other members of Alliance, decided that they should bomb my country. International law does not exist after 1999 because they did on their own will. What can I think about the NATO? I can't think as a military organization. For me, it's a criminal organization. Does NATO think about the interest of American people or British or French or anybody's? No, I'm definite that they don't think about the interest of the people of those countries. They are thinking and doing in the interest of the very, very rich people in that country who want to be a new pharaohs in this world. So we, the rest of the world, are supposed to be slaves. It is a great responsibility for the Western countries when they vote for their presidents and for their prime ministers and their leaders, because the rest of the world, the rest of us, where I belong, we depend on their decisions. And it is a great responsibility, and I just hope that they'll have enough strength to think not only about themselves, but also about the rest of us. Just for a tiny little second, please think about the rest of the world, and please choose leaders that cherish diplomacy and not guns. Please make NATO disappear. There is no reason, geopolitical or anything else, to exist anymore. It is the, shall we say, organization of the past. Please make it happen. Please, let's speak about things around the table and not with the guns.